Wednesday midweek edition of your favorite program on Leadership Television. My name is Winifred Ugbebo, and of course, the program is Inside Nigeria. I'm taking you through a review of national daily newspapers this Wednesday, and of course, we have Nigeria's most influential newspaper leading the pack of four review as always. That is Leadership newspaper. Leadership today has two leading stories on its cover because of the wraparound advert they have on taking prominent space on their cover. So we have Makinde Wike at Loggerheads again over PDP. Makinde, the governor of Oyo State, and the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, at Loggerheads again over PDP. Senate adjourns without verdict on Electoral Act Amendment B. But we are going to be taking some excerpts from that leading story because incidentally, that story is also a leading story in another daily newspaper we have for review on today's segment. So we move over to page 4 to get excerpts from the leading story on today's leadership. Makinde Wike at Loggerheads again over PDP. Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde and Federal Capital Territory FCT Minister Nyesom Wike resumed trading barbs at each other in their lingering battle for control of the People's Democratic Party (PDP). Wike, during the National Executive Committee NEC meeting of the PDP faction loyal to him in Abuja, vowed to keep an eye on activities in the Oyo State chapter of the PDP, stressing that he won't allow those he called vampires to hijack the party structure across the country. But in a vague response, Makinde yesterday declared that individuals he describes as vagabonds who previously wielded influence within the party had been expelled. The governor, who stated this during the unveiling of the Oyo State PDP Secretariat in Ibadan, the state capital, said the party is now free of internal disruption. Makinde and Wike, members of PDP's G5 governors, were strong allies going into the 2023 election. They both worked against the party's presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, citing grievances over non-adherence to the party's North-South geopower balance system. However, their relationship has since soared over the control of the PDP ahead of the 2027 election, with Makinde and his Bauchi state counterpart, Bala Mohammed, backing the Tanimu Turaki-led faction, while Wike backs the caretaker committee led by Abdurrahman Mohammed. The tussle between both camps came to a head when they expelled each other from the party and clashed at the party's national secretariat, resulting in its closure. While Ibadan court annulled the Makinde-led November National Convention last week, the Wike camp said it would hold its national convention on March 28, 2026. Excerpts from today's leading story on Makinde Wike at Loggerheads again over PDP. There obviously seems no end in sight to the protracted lingering crisis in PDP. Lastly, on the cover of Leadership Story, the last story is all about the forthcoming, I just said forthcoming conference award ceremony by Leadership Newspaper Group, which is holding in this month of February. Leadership Award, a push to do more, coming from Governor Oyembaji of Ekiti State. Ekiti State Governor Biodun Abayomi Oyembaji has said the Governor of the Year 2025 award conferred on him by Leadership Group Limited will motivate him and his team to do more. Governor Oyembaji of Ekiti State is Leadership Governor of the Year 2025. Congratulations to the governor. Of course, this is pushing you to do more, as you said. From the cover, we move to page 3 of Leadership, where we have our stand. And like I always mentioned, we review 3 pages on Leadership daily on this show. And that is the cover, our stand, which is the editorial, the stand of the paper, and the back page of the paper. And now we move to the second page, where we have move to page 3, where we have our stand. So this stand is on still on illicit drug trade and use. Still on illicit drug trade and use. From our stand, we move to the back page of Leadership. We move to the back page of leadership where we have Wednesday column with Olufunke Baruwa. Today she's writing on the future of aid and development. The future of aid and development. Ultimately, aid and development cannot survive on moral rhetoric alone. They must demonstrate credibility, effectiveness, and legitimacy, not just to taxpayers in donor countries, but to the people whose lives they claim to improve. For aid and development to remain relevant, they must stop serving donor politics alone and start empowering local priorities. African intellectual leadership, institutional strength, accountable global governance, and the systemic change needed to end dependency. We just took quotes from today's column with Olufunke Barwa, the future of aid and development. And like we also normally do, we must not fail to add humor and spice our day with humor. Let's visit Ghana Must Go. Yiwada, that is APC National Chairman, says APC doors open to Kwankwanso. And of course, Ghana Must Go says, don't let Ganduje hear you, the former governor of Kano State. Don't let him hear you. It's on that humor note we conclude review of Leadership newspaper this Wednesday. For more, log into the website of Leadership, www.leadership.ng. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, same leading story with that of leadership, and that is Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun says vagabonds in PDP gone, says Makinde. Wike camp dissolves Northwest Southwest ESCOs. Note, like I said earlier, no end in sight for the protracted crisis in PDP, and election is just by the corner. 2027 elections is almost here. Vagabonds in PDP gone, says Makinde. Similar story we have with that of leadership. Daily Sun's other stories gracing the cover. Nigeria would not reverse economic reforms, Tinubu tells World Bank. And on the business boss, we have $120 billion fuel import bid choking Africa. Federal government backs Dangote to capture 20% of market. $120 billion fuel import bid choking Africa. Federal government backs Dangote to capture 20% of market. 10.6 million Nigerians hooked on drugs, marijuana, and of course, like we just reviewed, leadership. The stand today is still on illicit drug trade and use. Of course, most of the stories is coming from the NDLE chief Marwa, who made some disturbing disclosures recently. Customs arrest 8 suspects with hard drugs, others worth 319 billion naira. Customs arrest 8 suspects with hard drugs, others worth 319 billion naira. Tax reforms have spiked business costs toward Nigeria's January expansion, NESG. Lassa fever outbreak, Benue records 56 suspected cases. FCT workers suspend strike as Labour Wike reach agreement. These are the cover stories on today's Daily Sun newspaper. For more, log into the website of the paper, www.thesun.ng. From Daily Sun, we move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Vanguard. Still on PDP crisis. Vanguard says PDP, Makinde, Wike fight dirty. No more vagabonds in PDP, Makinde, and Wike fires back. You are a repentant vagabond. That story is on page 5 of Vanguard newspaper. Like leadership, it has a wraparound that takes most of the page today. Atop the masthead of Vanguard, taxes fuel hike, slow business growth in January, NESG report. Same story on Vanguard newspaper. Taxes fuel hike, slow business growth in January, NESG report. And that also concludes review of front headline stories on Vanguard newspaper this Wednesday. For more, log into the website of Vanguard, www.vanguardngr.com. From Vanguard, the next paper we have is Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune still on PDP crisis. Makinde fires another shot. We won't allow anyone to hold PDP down, he declares. Abdurrahman led camp faces March 29-30 as new convention date. Party's management staff workers institute declare loyalty to Turaki-led NWC. These are kickers to the PDP crisis story graced in the cover of Nigerian Tribune this Wednesday. We won't allow anyone to hold PDP down, he declares. Abdurrahman-led camp fixes March 29-30 as new convention dates. Party's management staff, Workers Institute declare loyalty to Turaki-led NWC. And the story continues on page 3 of Nigerian Tribune. UBA Group announces Loknath Mishra as CEO, UBA Bank. 54% of Nigerian minors buy alcohol themselves. NAFDAC is the reason why NAFDAC is embarking on clampdown on sachet liquor. It says 54% of Nigerian minors buy alcohol themselves. Of course, it's no longer news that Nigerians' demographic consists mainly of youths, and 54% of these youths buy alcohol themselves, coming from NAFDAC. Terrorism financing, federal government arraigns Malami's son on 5-count charge. Naira gains against dollar closes at 1,372.91 kobo per dollar. And atop the masthead of Nigerian Tribune, guessing game continues as Senate fails to pass Electoral Act at third promise. Senate proposes new revenue formula to favor federal government. And lastly, on health news today, like I always mentioned, Nigerian Tribune has fixed and permanent health news on its cover. And today's news says 4 in 10 cancer cases preventable, coming from WHO. 4 in 10 cancer cases preventable. Of course, most of these illnesses today are actually preventable if you see diagnose it on time, and before that time. That is why regular screening and checkup is very, very essential. Doctors will tell you it's better you go for screening, go for health checks every time periodically, so that if at all there's a disease, you can actually catch it fast. 4 in 10 cancer cases preventable, coming from WHO. And that brings to a close the review of front headline stories on Nigerian Tribune today. For more, log into the website of Nigerian Tribune. From Nigerian Tribune, we move to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is The Punch. The Punch says electricity subsidy, federal government to deduct 3.6 trillion naira from federation accounts. This story on electricity subsidy removal is what most papers were leading with yesterday during our review. And of course, The Punch is taking it further. Federal government says it's going to make deductions from state governments' accounts to also pay for subsidy. As federal government begins sharing of power subsidy burden with states, local governments, 1.2 trillion naira to be deducted yearly. NPO to Tinubu regulate foreign platforms or lose Nigerian media. Conventions showdown, PDP governors resist Wike bloc's move to dismantle committees. Beside the masthead of The Punch, genocide accusations, U.S. Congress panels hold new session on Nigeria today. And atop the masthead of The Punch, bandits kill 30 in fresh Kwara Katsina attacks. That story continues on page 43 of The Punch. Bandits kill 30 in fresh Kwara Katsina attacks. And that also brings to a close the review of front headline stories on The Punch this Wednesday. For more, log into the website of The Punch newspaper. From The Punch, we move to the last paper we have on our lineup for review this Wednesday, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says Senate delays towards electoral reforms as group warns of risk to democracy. Like we had with the other previous paper we reviewed before, The Guardian says for the third time, Senate fails to make good its promise. Senate delays towards electoral reforms as group warns of risk to democracy. Just beneath the masthead of The Guardian, no retreat on reforms, Tinubu tells World Bank. U.S. military sends team as bandits kill over 25 in Katsina. Major stakeholders tax federal government on information sovereignty, digital threats. Lastly, on the cover of The Guardian, PDP crisis deepens as Wike-backed faction dissolves structures. Makinde warns against hijack. And that story runs on page 6